Thanks for sharing us in the one slot. And now join us for the second half. We have Sasha Serafin Mbote, the director of Maridadi Tools and Safaris and Sasha Mbote Foundation. She joins me from Zanzibar, Tanzania. A warm welcome to you, Sasha, and thank you so much for joining me on One Slot.
Thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here tonight with you so that we can discuss the issues affecting Africa.
Definitely. And one of the issues affecting Africa, as we try to remember the victims of the transatlantic slave trade. I mean, lots of things happened during that era. For you as an African, what does this mean to you? What does this signify to you? Even 400 years after, till today, how does it affect you as an African?
I can say that this affects me as an African because, like, if I check my own country, Kenya, we are headed to 60 years old. As you can see right now, there's unrest in Kenya and things are still the same. Things haven't changed. My grandfathers both died believing in the promises they were promised. They never acquired any of those promises. So basically how I see this slave trade, it is actually systemically set to oppress us because no matter what we try, we are not moving any step forward. If you look at most African governments, most of them are funded by European oppressors and Asian oppressors. And I say oppressors because we are economically oppressed. So if you disable people economically, it is very hard for them to rise no matter what they do. So unless we fight these systems, there is nothing that we are doing. Right now, if you look at my country, it is the same thing that happens after elections. Like there is post-election violence and you find leaders are fighting one another. So I wonder if a house is divided, it can never stand no matter what happens. And you find that why I'm calling this systemic oppression is because at some point you find the government is working with international bodies for their own interests and a few leaders at the top, like in Kenya, you will find it is 40. When I say we are economically oppressed, I know what I'm saying, because if we were not economically oppressed, then we wouldn't be struggling. We wouldn't be having children who are going to bed with hunger. We would not be having this divide and rule set up. Because I think when we had the barter trade, we did better than what we're doing right now. And actually, for me, I pray for a future where we can go back to barter trade because capitalism has zero humanity.
And talking about the future of Africa, you also mentioned the leaders. You talked about your country. Now, some people will posit that the future of Africa and its emancipation rests in the virtue of good leaders. But in today's world, now experts and even yourself have posited that today we have more politicians than leaders. Taking a look at Kenya and the leaders that we have today in Africa, what do you make of this argument? Do you think that these are still some of the issues that are affecting Africa's emancipation from the Western or colonial powers?
Yes, I believe this is exactly what is happening. I've been traveling to Africa and I started to understand our issues. It's actually the same script, different story. In Kenya, when you look at Kenya, we are divided by tribe. If a Nigerian is in South Africa, they are being kicked out by their fellow blacks because of xenophobia. If I can be arrested with an African passport in an African border, and I can still have problems in Asian countries, and I can still have a problem with European nations carrying an African passport. So if I don't belong in Africa, I don't belong in Asia, I don't belong in Europe, where do I belong as an African child? If I am being called a foreigner in African country when I'm trying to do my business, literally, like I'm saying, there are systemic set rules that were done immediately after colonization for neo-colonialism. The only African leader I know in East Africa who refused this was Nyerere. Nyerere, when the leaders were being invited to London, when they were being paid for private jets, like my first founding father, Jomo Kenyatta, they went there with private jets. When he was called there by the Queen Elizabeth, when he reached there, he went with a normal flight, and they were trying to get him entourage and wondering why he went like that. But he said he went there as a normal Tanzanian. He was going there to fight for a normal Tanzanian. So that is one of the greatest leaders that we have had since independence in East Africa. And actually, he founded a very stable governorship Tanzania, because as you can see, Tanzania does not have the kind of wrangles that we have. The leaders, like the other day, I was watching Mama Samia and she was doing some interview in South Africa, and they did ask her how she's able to stabilize her country with working together with opposition. And she gave a very good example. She said, as much as sometimes they don't agree with the opposition, none of them has the title deed of Tanzania. And she said that during Women's Day, the opposition held the event for the Women's International Day, and she, as a president, was invited there as a guest. It would never happen like that in Kenya, and I'm not trying to downplay my country. The kind of leadership that we have in Kenya is what was set after independence. What they did, they introduced democratic parties. Democratic parties were not to work for us, but were to work for our colonizers years later after they have gone. And that is why you see that in Africa, we are the poorest, yet we have all of the resources that we need. I was in South Sudan in 2013, and I had to leave when there was unrest. You find that immediately the country is about to be stabilized, the opposition is funded by international bodies to incite people to bring chaos. So what I can say about Africa is that a house divided shall never stand.
And talking about this future of Africa and the House of Africa, I mean, in the transatlantic slave period, we had people who were forcibly moved from Africa to the European shores. Right now, we have a massive rate of migration, people who are moving from Africa to the European countries. I mean, what is your take on that?
My take on this again is that our leaders are so ignorant in Africa, and I don't apologize for that. Right now, they don't even know what is happening in the migration that is happening in Africa. As a travel agent, I've been traveling a lot with Caribbeans and African Americans, and I was supporting that mission so much, the way they are coming back. But you see, also, I tell them to stop romanticizing Africa, because when they come, since in America or other European nations or Asian nations, they are being sidelined with their race. When they come to Africa and they see that everyone is smiling at them and nobody is harassing them in any way because of their color, they start to romanticize Africa. And I tell them that when they're investing in Africa, they have to make sure that they are working. They're getting the legal documents properly from the governments, because I've seen people being conned, and I want to tell them we still have a long way to go, because like some of them who have gone to the Gambia and started investing there, they're actually talking in ways that you can see these are going to be our future colonizers. And these are our own people. They look down upon, some of them look down upon us. Some of them are happy that they are coming back to Africa and that we are working closely together. And I do support all that. I was at the Ghana, and I like what President Ado has been doing right now as we speak. Spike Lee is there. A lot of African Americans, Jamaicans have actually been given citizenships in Ghana, and they have President Ado has also given them IDs. So for if they are doing business, so I believe in all the African countries that they are migrating back to, Ghana is their safest place, because the president there has embraced them and is actually given them ideas to do business. So somehow they are covered, and somehow whatever they are going to invest, they are not going to lose anything. But when I come to the other African countries, if they just invest blindly, they might end up losing their money. And then we also know our leaders. We have seen how our leaders are dividing us. In Kenya, we are divided by tribe. In South Africa, we are divided by xenophobia. For me, traveling with an African passport, I've had a lot of struggles. Sometimes you're arrested at the borders. They want to extort money from you, so they shouldn't just come back blindly. And I know they're coming back with the dollar, so definitely they have more money than us, and they're going to be able to put up businesses faster than us. But they need to know that our political background is very, very toxic. They might end up investing in Africa, and then in a few years to come, the same way we are divided, the people will start being divided. We are going to be divided. And then they're going to be attacked, plus their businesses through xenophobia. So before we do all this migration thing, I think we need to educate one another, first of all, about the disunity amongst us as Black people. In Kenya, you can see a Luo attacking a Kikuyu. We are all Kenyans. For me, personally, I've never cared who the president is. Even there was a time I said they should just give Raila Odinga the seat. We see like if the unrest in Kenya will finally end, you know. And
now,
when
Sasha,
you come to find out,
Sasha,
yes?
you're talking about blacks attacking blacks. I'm also looking at the issue of racism, because one of the effects of the transatlantic slave trade, we saw this superiority of the white race, and right now we're seeing reports of different forms of racism. So we have xenophobia at one side, when you talk about the blacks attacking blacks. We also see the fact that the whites are now attacking blacks. I mean, if you go to places like US, you have places like even Britain, there's this silent form of racism we're seeing now. So how do you think we can begin to solve this issue and, you know, erase this mentality of white superiority over the blacks?
First of all, we are the ones, middle class all over the world. Middle class are the ones who hold systemic oppression everywhere in the world, whether you're Black, white, Asian, because we also have poor people in those countries. So what I'm trying to say is, for us to be able to overcome this, we cannot be able to overcome it if we are still hungry. Our people are hungry. Our people don't have land. Our people don't have food. So if you disempower people economically, you can twist them, like what is happening right now in some ghettos in Kenya. You can you can pay them small money for them to go on the streets and fight one another. You can make them think that the problem of a Luo is because of a Kikuyu. The problem of a Kikuyu is because of a Luo, you know. So for us to be able to overcome this as Black people, we have first to empower ourselves financially, which is very, very difficult, because I have tried to work in African countries. I have tried to empower girls, especially the ones who are abandoned with pregnancies. But then you find that you're still being fought because you're from another country by your own people. So for us to be able to overcome this, we have to empower our people economically. And that's why I did start my organization to empower girls and young men in the spa industry, so that when people have skills, it is very, very hard for the politicians to buy them, because our politicians buy our people for, with 500 in Kenya. Like, someone will be given 500 to go and destroy somebody's business, and they are hungry. That will save them for the day for bread. So we need to empower ourselves financially. Otherwise, we are never gonna be able to overcome the oppression from the Asians and the Europeans. Like I was telling a friend of mine yesterday, the way I travel with the African Americans and Caribbean people. One time I was with a Jamaican lady and we were walking in Stone Town in Zanzibar, and she wanted to eat Indian food, and I didn't know, because I don't do Indian food, so I didn't know like the particular place I could take her. And when we were walking, I told her, tried everywhere, not found. And then she's like, okay, fine, let's just go and eat whatever. But I wanted to eat curry. And we were passing through an Indian guy's shop. And when he heard that, he left his shop to go and show us where another Indian is selling that food. And he took us to the restaurant and went back to his work. You're not going to find that amongst us Black people. Black people will do anything to bring you down when you're trying to bring them up. So we need to educate one another that the divide between us was not part of us. It was the biggest way for colonizers to use against us to be able to colonize us. They had to divide us first. And as you can see right now, we have a lot of single mothers all over. And this was part of the colonization. They found us with very simple homes. Now it is very hard to find even a woman my age with a stable marriage. They have set the divorce code for us. People think that
Sasha, quickly, how do you think this has also affected, you know, the African true culture? Because when you talk about the slave trade and colonization, there were some things that were done there that is outlawing of African culture, outlawing of the religion. How do you think that we can get the true African culture back, especially for Africans in diaspora?
We are trying to educate people a lot. Actually, the person who contacted me from the BBC to connect me with you guys actually was told that I speak a lot about Pan-Africanism. And what I think, what are supposed to do is for us to start it were taken away from us. And as we continue to educate one another, the only way that we're going to be able to overcome this is by making sure that even in our schools, that we bring back the real African education, because we were stripped of everything. As you can see, I am wearing my natural hair. I just started wearing my natural hair the other day, because even now I meet with some people, my own Africans, and be like, oh, you need to do your hair because you have to have the fake life, the fake hair for you to be accepted in this society. As a child, my mom had to straighten my hair. But when I started to integrate with the Black people from the diaspora, I started opening my eyes, because for them, they think different. Like in 2015 is when they started to talk to me about GMOs. Africans have just found out about the GMOs the other day. So it's a very long, it is a long way for us to come back to us, because everything from us was stripped, from us. We were taught that it is witchcraft. Right now, if I take garlic as an antibiotic, and let's say I went to a traditional doctor in Africa and he told me to heal myself with a few herbs. I did that when we were struggling with COVID in Zanzibar. In Zanzibar, you will be sick and they just go outside and pick a plant and tell you, just boil this or just chew it, and you heal it yourself. If I do it in front of my own people, they will start saying that it is witchcraft, while they are going to buy the same things that were taken from us and turned into the pharmaceutical companies, and it's now called antibiotic. But I could just swallow garlic and we're good to go. So it's the education that we need amongst us.
All right, thank you so much, Sasha. Definitely a lot of education needs to be done to rebuild the African image. Thank you so much for joining us, and once lot, Sasha, and for sharing so much light on this particular issue. Thank you.